And there came one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore, that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon the scarlet-coloured beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet colour, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication.
Welcome, family, to another edition of Stranger Thinking Media. This is Yesha Yahu, where we bring you the gospel of Yahusha HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, to address the problems of a modern world. Today's topics: the beast, the 7 heads, and the 10 horns of Revelations and Daniel. Revelations 13. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. The beast. We're going to do a deep dive into what that means. Revelations 13 again. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Now, people have debated this forever and ever and ever, and, you come up with different conclusions because the time's not right. When the time is right, it becomes very obvious. Like, there's things that are more obvious now than the people who were reading this in the 1500s. They thought, well, we know what the answer is. We know what's going on. And it turns out they were so far off because, technology wasn't advanced yet. The nations weren't aligned right. All sorts of things were not really lined up properly to say that these prophecies were coming to pass. Now, they were in process, as we shall see, but there are things that we're now seeing that seems to be inching us even closer to the end. So I think there are things you can understand now, or we as a whole can understand. So this beast, when they talk about it, it's like a leopard and like a bear and like a lion. Well, we've seen that before in the book of Daniel. And so this is kind of just like piggybacking off of Daniel, was it chapter 7, I believe? So just hang on and let's see if we can tie it all together and dispel some of the myths you've been led to believe. Revelation 13 and verse 4. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? War. Why war? And there was given unto him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Now, the 42 months, I'm not going to get into that, but we're going to give you a basic outline of what's going on here. So the question really comes in, are they talking about things that have happened already? There's some groups that think everything is fulfilled already. And so the question would be, Are we in the millennium now? Or I wouldn't think this is the millennium. If this is the millennium, we've been sold a bill of goods. No, I forget what do they call those people? Preterists. They think everything's happened already. So when Jerusalem fell, they said, "Oh, that was the beginning of the end." But their problem is they look at the terms latter days and last days as being like um, something immediate rather than some extended long period of time after the resurrection, actually the death of Christ and the resurrection. So from Christ on is the last days. In the latter days, it's just my opinion, the latter days bring you into that tribulation period. So, or do I have it backwards? The latter days and then the last days. So anyway, it's broken up into little parts, but overall, we're in the last days. So everything after Christ. So here we see they're going to worship the dragon, and you can already see this falling away from, Christ and his teachings, and it's subtle. It's not as like a in your face kind of thing. People think it's this. Oh, everybody's going to be worshiping, this red devil with horns and a pitchfork and all this stuff and pentagrams and witches and war. Yeah, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't go on, but it's not that obvious. And there are many people who are even good people who are so deceived that they can't see that they're actually in it. Maybe if they could see, they wouldn't be in it, but they can't see. And that comes from above. So the Father in heaven can blind you for his purposes. But I do know this: in the last days, he said to the children of Israel that in the land of your captivity will you remember yourself. And I see a lot of things going on. A lot of people waking up to certain truths of the scriptures and cleaving to it more than since the Jews were expelled from Europe back in 1492 is when the process started. And I can go all into that history, but time is of the essence here, so we'll continue on. So, okay, who is, when they say who is like unto the beast, who's able to make war? War is one of those things that every time I see war, there's certain things that just come to my mind. When I see the term war, or I see the term red, like if something is described as red, I immediately think of Esau, Edom. If the dragon is red, that dragon is Esau, Edom, or his father, meaning his father in the spirit. If the beast is red, I think of Esau, Edom. Because people will tell you he's gone extinct. No, he is not gone extinct. In fact, he's received a blessing that gives him the power of war. He's basically, when it comes to war, he's an unstoppable force. When it comes to the blessing, he lives in the, what do they say? He would receive the dew of heaven and live in the fat of the land. He's wealthy and powerful. And he's probably running the world system today. And for those who don't realize it, that Edom is actually the descendants of Esau, who's the brother of Jacob, Israel, right? So you got Esau, Edom, and Jacob, Israel. And there is a unwavering, perpetual hatred that the children of Edom have for the children of Jacob, or Israel. And you just look around the world and see, we really need to think this through. There are certain things that go on that I can look at and say, yeah, this people has a perpetual hatred against that people. I mean, like, seems like forever. And for no real reason other than they just hate them. It's a spiritual thing. They hate them and dehumanize them to a point where it's almost like they don't think the other group is human. And I can get into that. There's a reason for that too. So anyway, but you got to understand who the players are and who they are today. And if you don't understand that, like I just saw a video this morning, the guy was trying to explain who Edom was, and he spiritualized it away. Just like people spiritualize Israel away. The church says, oh, we're spiritual Israel. You know, that's where people are going to be deceived. They're going to get just totally, they're 180 degrees out from the truth because they don't want to believe the truth. Because the truth may implicate their deeds. Because I'm going to tell you now, the people who control this world have controlled what history was going to be taught and what people should believe. And they believe a lie. I'm going to do a lot of stuff on those lies because history has been distorted to a degree that it's just amazing. It's disgusting, actually, once you start really digging into history and what really happened. It's just disgusting what they've done to history. And what they've done to history is attempt to destroy the culture and creed of the children of Israel, wipe it out, and claim it. So we're not going to dig all into that, but you got to know who the players are. And if you're on the wrong side of this thing, remember the Most High, through Christ, through the Messiah. And I know a lot of Israelites will, they don't like this, but the truth is, faith in Christ is salvation to anyone. You can be grafted into Israel. It's just that there's certain prophecies about Esau, Edom, that tells you that because of his position in this current world, the old saying, how difficult is it for a rich man to enter into the kingdom? If you're at the top of this current world, it's going to be hard for you, and it is hard because you can see how so many people don't want to hear the truth. I don't care how much evidence you provide, they don't want to hear it. A lot of Israelites don't want to hear it because they've been brainwashed to a level that they just accept the status quo. And they're being bombarded with negative images to keep them in a position of disarray, of confusion, to ensure that they cannot stand up. What did J. Edgar Hoover say during Operation COINTELPRO? If you don't know what that is, look it up. He said there'd never be another black messiah unless we create one. What does that mean? Why did he say that? What does he know? There's a confederation here against one specific group of people on this planet. And there are other videos I've done and am going to do which explains that. But you have to understand, you can't understand these prophecies until you perfectly identify. When I say perfectly, you got to, who's riding what beast, essentially, is what I'm saying. Who is riding the beast? Who is guiding the beast? Who is the serpent's seed? There's a lot to be told there. And the problem is, those who are riding high, it's not going to be easy to come down off that mountaintop for them. They're at the top of this pyramid, and they don't want to be at the bottom. But that's the problem the Pharisees had. And if you understand who the Pharisees are, you got to get into that history. Read the book of Maccabees. The Pharisees primarily had taken control of Israel, and the Pharisees primarily are descended from Esau, Edom. And you say, how did that happen? Well, there's a lot that went on. And if you don't read the book of Maccabees, if you throw the Apocrypha out the window, you will never know. That's the crazy part. There's a reason they got rid of that book, because it tells on people. Okay, the book of Jasher tells you what happened to Esau. Esau was moved up into Europe. And then if you read the apocryphal supplement to the book of Esther, it'll tell you who the evil Haman was. Why did Haman hate the Jews so much that he wanted to wipe them out? That was no spur of the moment thought. The Jews were his enemies from way back. This is not a new thing. It said that Haman was an Agagite. Who's Agag? He was the king of the Amalekites. So by calling him an Agagite, they were giving him descendancy from Agag, the king of the Amalekites, who is also an Edomite. And the Amalekites are a especially wicked group. So anyway, it says he was an Agagite from Macedonia. Well, how did this Edomite, Amalekite, get to Macedonia? Well, the book of Jasher tells you. You just have to read it. All these scriptures are out there. And then you have this one organization that tells you, oh, no, you can't read that. If you told me I can't read that or I shouldn't read that, the first thing I'm going to do is read it because I want to know, what are these people hiding? And I read it, and there's a lot being hidden. So my point is, you just have to dig into history. Esau, Edom was taken into Europe, into Macedonia, and into Rome. And I'm going to leave it at that. You figure out the rest, and you see who's powerful in this world today. Okay, so he got pulled into Europe. Now I'm saying he spread all over the world at this point, but he got pulled into Europe. And so Haman was one of them. And he came to be second in command of the Persian Empire just before they went to war against the Greco-Macedonian Empire, or Greco-Macedonians. They weren't an empire yet. But if you think about it, Haman, being a Macedonian and an Amalekite, became second in command in Persia just before the fall of Persia, which tells you he may have been a double agent. He may have been sending information back to Macedonia because that's who the Persians fought and lost to lose their empire. Anyway, there's a lot going on there. I'm going to move on because this could get really wordy. Revelation 13, verse 6. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war. There's that word war again. War with the saints, the Kodashim. That's the Hebrew word. These words like saints and church. And I'm going to do some videos on that too, because they don't give you proper meaning or proper context when you just gravitate to these words that aren't really in the original scriptures. So saints means Kodashim. That means his called out assembly, his called out ones, and to overcome them. So he's going to overcome the Kodashim. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. At that time that this stuff was written, John was on the Isle of Patmos. He was in the midst of the Roman Empire. And he was writing letters, and his letters were probably being, like checked before they went out. So he was kind of writing in code. So he's and the Bible is good for that. It's a very coded book. So he's writing in code, talking about beasts and 7 hills and 10 horns and So the people he's writing to can figure it out, hopefully, maybe, in time, But the Romans wouldn't know what a lot of that stuff meant. So this beast here has power over all kindreds. At that time, did the Roman Empire have power over all kindreds? That's a no. That's a negatory. But if you look at recent events, like I say, you got to kind of know who the players are today. But if you look at recent events, there's an event that occurred a couple of years ago where we watched the entire world get kind of shut down and certain things were forced upon everybody on the planet. There were pockets that didn't, you know, for, for whatever reason. But you could see a time coming where they'll be able to enforce anything they come up with. This was like a trial run, it seemed like. But I won't talk about it because, I don't want to get like blocked or something. But understand, the entire world was under edicts from for the first time ever. Every country on earth was like essentially under the gun. Like that's power that has never been seen before on the whole planet. So know the players. I'll say this: the Roman Empire is not what you think. And I did a video on Mystery Babylon, so you kind of, if you go ahead and watch that one, it gets you in the ballpark. But Mystery Babylon, Edom was called the daughter of Babylon as she burned down or egged the Babylonians on to burn down the temple. And then the Romans did the same thing. They burned down the temple. In fact, not one stone was left upon another. Well, if you understand that the Edomites are at the head of this Roman order, that means twice they gave the order to destroy the temple of the Most High. Twice. That's you can't just blow that off. So this Roman order, what is it today? Well, we're going to get into that, but just understand this, that essentially the brother of Jacob Israel is perpetuating his demise, and he has been. I mean, since they parted ways that day, and they built that pillar saying, "Hey, we'll not be enemies with each other." Yeah, right. That lasted for a blink of an eye, but anyway, you can identify Esau. I mean, not specifically that you can't. Well, maybe you can, but generally what he's doing just by the prophecies. And you should know generally what condition Israel's in. They are 180 degrees out. If Edom is ruling, know for a certainty that Jacob is suffering. And you can figure out some of that too. So he overcomes the saints, and you can see in the Roman Empire that the Kodashim went through many trials, being thrown to the lions, being crucified, being burned at the stake. And the Roman Empire is the beast that was, is not, and yet is. So it's continued to this day in an off-on kind of way, So even up through the, 1500s, Jews were being, you had the Inquisition where Jews were being forced to convert to Catholicism. And they, a lot of them, probably most of them refused, and they were burnt at the stake, or they were clubbed and their skulls were cracked. And they found mass grave sites in Portugal, and the Portuguese apologized to the Jews. Well, they apologized to the Jews, but, who are they talking to? So anyway, I'm not going to get into that in this video, but there was a certain terminology for the Jews in Portugal in the 1500s. And it might shock you. I'll give you a little hint. They were called, the Jews of Portugal were actually called the Black Portuguese. And the term Negro, that was for the Jews of Portugal and Spain. They were called Negroes. So, you could take that, and I'm not making this up. I have like 100 books in my library that talk about this stuff. This is not something that's made up. This is actual historical documents written by the Portuguese. You follow? And it's not just the Portuguese. The Spanish have written about it. The Italians wrote about it. The French wrote about it. All this information is out there. And like I said, at some point, I'm going to get to that. But my goal primarily is to give people scriptural understanding. Because more important, even than ethnicity, you could be an Israelite, you can be a Hebrew, but if you're still wicked as all get out, it doesn't matter. Your name will get blotted out of the book of life just as fast. So the important thing is, as your eyes open and you can start seeing a little more clearly, you have to start getting into the scriptures, digging into the scriptures without becoming pharisaical. Although that's not going to be the push in the end. In the end, the push is going to be lawlessness. People using grace as license. And if you look around current events, I mean, you see these Christian pastors, especially the ones who are making all this money and these mega church people. I mean, their linen is dirty. They got a lot of skeletons in their closet, and it seems like a lot of it's coming out. And I'm not saying anybody's perfect, and I'm not saying that the Most High won't forgive. But the key is instruction. Follow the instructions. Torah means instructions. Stop saying the law has been done away with. If you look at all these basically 2 millennia of people and their, grace, although starting out the gate, people adhered to the Torah. You got to understand, Paul was a Benjamite. He called himself a Jew because Benjamin was, tied to Judah, and so collectively they were called the Jews. But he was specifically from the tribe of Benjamin. He kept Torah. He kept the Sabbath. I'm saying the initial church did all those things. So how do we go from that? I mean, essentially, if you want to think about it, all of the first, I want to use the term church. I'd rather use the term Kodashim, but the original church, they were all almost 100% Jews, right? And then it branches out. And then there's more to that than meets the eye. And then you have to look at it when they talk about church fathers and the beginnings of the church. There's a disconnect. What church are they talking about? Because there was the church led by the children of Judah, the Yahudim, whose Messiah was of the lineage of Yahudah. He was a Yahudi. And then suddenly it got hijacked. But what system was ruling at the time? The system of Babylon. And that system was the operating system for the Roman Empire, Zoroastrian and all that stuff. And so these religions that were espoused by the Roman Empire are now, this new thing and is coming up. And what do? Being politicians, they incorporate it. So they just rename stuff. So statues of Jupiter became Jesus, Statues of Isis and Semiramis become Mary. So it just got hijacked. And then they start passing laws and saying that we stand in the place of Christ, which is pure blasphemy. We stand in the place of Christ and we say we shall worship on Sunday. Only because they say so. The reason they say so is because that was part of Zoroastrianism, Babylonian traditions. That's why they changed it. And so you call yourself a believer, but understand Christ was not a Babylonian. He was not a Roman. He was an Israelite. And the king is an Israelite of the line of Judah. He wasn't a pope. He wasn't you know what I'm saying? He wasn't an emperor. What did he believe? And it seems like, these people today, they say, oh, I'm Protestant, but you protested only up to a certain point. And the Catholic Church kind of laughs at the Protestants, saying they're still under our authority because they still observe Sunday. The Catholic Church will tell you this. They still observe Christmas. They still observe Easter. What the Catholic Church will tell you is if they really wanted to break away, they would have went back to following the scriptures. You see, the Catholic Church is saying we don't have to follow scriptures because the Pope is the vicar of Christ. He's in place of Christ. So if you're going to protest and move away from the Catholic Church, you have to go back to the scriptures. You have to go back to the Sabbath. You have to go back to Torah because the original Christians did all that. It was the Romans unifying their empire. They kind of did a mishmash. They confused it. Babylon. Babel means to confuse, right? They confused everything and mixed it all together and came up with this operating system. You know, and that operating system is what rides the Roman beast. Okay, I'm not going to keep going over that, and it now has power over all kindreds and tongues and nations. It's still in place. It's just spread around the globe now. But the same tribes, and we're going to get into that in this video, the same tribes are still around. So, anyways, I said a lot there. And so this might take a minute. Still in Revelations 13. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Now, what I'm going to tell you here is if you look in the prophecies about, like, look at this prophecy, and then look at the various prophecies concerning Esau, Edom, they kind of parallel. They parallel so much, you know, that this Roman beast, this last beast, the fourth beast, will run to the end because Christ himself, Hamashiach himself, is reserving that beast for himself. He is personally going to destroy this beast. It shall not be overthrown by the hand of man. But he says the same thing about Esau, Edom. He's specifically coming back to destroy Esau, Edom. So let's see. If we put all the pieces together, you start realizing who's at the head of the Roman beast. Because Esau, Edom suffers the exact fate of the Roman Empire. Tells me he's probably the Roman Empire or at the head of it. I'm not saying, you got to understand, Japheth, his descendants are in the Roman Empire. And, but specifically, he's being led and deceived by Esau, Edom. And so people, you know, Japheth's descendants have benefited, though, from Esau, Edom being in power. So a lot of them are going to have a hard time in the end when the Messiah comes back to restore Israel. And make no mistake, he's coming back to restore Israel. You read this book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 6 and verse 9. It says, for Esau, Edom is the end of the world, but that which follows, the world to come, is Jacob, which tells you the kingdom is Jacob's kingdom. And their king is of the tribe of Yahudah, Judah. That's Hamashiach. He's the king. He's not some Roman. He's not some pope. And you think he's going to come back and establish a Gentile world order? You got to be kidding me. Scriptures tell you, the scriptures that they did not canonize because they don't want people hearing this. the Roman Church says that they are the kingdom of God. No, they're not. They're something. They're part of a kingdom. They're riding the empire. That's what they're doing. But this is there's a lot going on here. But you have to track it. You have to track Esau, Edom. You have to track Jacob, Israel. And that's the only way you're really going to understand prophecy in the end. Okay? So we'll leave it at that. But this thing about the sword, remember Esau's blessing? He would become rich and live in the fatted land and receive the dew of heaven by the power of his sword. That's the blessing that was given to him by his father Yitzhak, Isaac, right? So he's going to be rich, but war is his vehicle. And if you see war on the earth, and you can go back into the days of the Watchers. They're the ones that taught man the art of war. And so you talk about the Watchers and their offspring, the Nephilim, serpent seed. But did not the Messiah call the Pharisees, ye are of your father the devil? So the serpent seed doesn't have to be giants. And it's not necessarily always a physical seed, but it can be a physical seed. So my point is, Esau, he definitely falls into that category. So he's ruling over Japheth. Japheth is deceived. Japheth thinks, I don't know what Japheth is thinking, but he's in a trance. And he's being used all over the world to fulfill Esau Edom's will. Okay, so, but at the end of the day, he that led into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killed with the sword, Esau's sword, must be killed with the sword. Who is he that comes from Edom with apparel dyed in red, glorious in his appearance? Was he once raised from the dead? For the day of his wrath is come, and the day of his redeemed. Treading the press of his indignation, foes as though they'd never been. For he's Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first, the last, the word of Yah, the one who bore my sin. That's a poem I wrote. So now it's copywritten. I got it on tape here, right? Or digitized. But yeah, they're talking about the Messiah coming from Bozrah, the capital of Edom. Now that's symbolic today. Because I'm telling you, the capital of Edom is wherever the head of this beast is. And we can go more into that, because it's not where you think necessarily. In fact, I'm going to do a specific video on modern Babylon, because there's so many questions on that. People are just like, what the heck? Oh, Babylon's this church. Oh, Babylon's this country. Well, it's not like wrong. It's just this, Babylon is more than that. So especially mystery Babylon. But just know at the head of all this, the daughter of Babylon, Esau, Edom, is manipulating the strings for the puppet show. And we are all in the show. So let's giddy up. This is going to be a long video. I'm apologizing in advance, but you learn a lot. You'll learn a lot. Revelation 17, verse 9, and here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Well, is that symbolic or is that real? And I really want to dig into this one because some of it's symbolic, but there's a simpler answer if you're just paying attention. And I haven't heard anybody say this yet. I mean, it's real simple. The 7 heads. Let's talk about it. Revelation 17, verse 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Okay, they're saying 7 mountains. And they talk about the 7 hills of Rome. So, yeah, that makes sense because they are talking about the Roman Empire. But is it deeper than that? Are these seven heads actually seven mountains? Or at that point in time, was Rome the culmination of the seven heads? I mean, the beast is the Roman beast, but it has seven heads. Are these hills actually heads? Well, of course not. So count the number seven. How many heads were there? Think about the statue in Daniel and the empires that made up that statue. So I'm going to go into it quick. So the statue in Daniel, the head of gold was Babylon. The chest and arms were silver, were the Persian Empire. The body of bronze was the Greco-Macedonian, and the legs of iron is the Roman Empire. Of course, that is split into two parts. And so you could say it's split into two parts because of Rome was one capital and Constantinople was another capital. Or you can also say it's split into two parts because it was the beast that was in leg one, is not, and that yet is leg two, you know. And then the feet are 10 toes. His feet are iron mixed with miry clay with 10 toes, standing for the 10 horns. What are those 10 horns? We're going to get into that. But the seven heads is simple. When you go back to the book of Daniel, they talk about that specifically. So Revelation 17, verse 10, and there are seven kings, five are fallen, one is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goeth into perdition. Well, well, well. Five are fallen. Understand it's being written at a specific point in time, in the midst of the Roman Empire. So let's count it off. The beast, if you go in the book of Daniel, they're talking about, what was it? The first beast was like a lion with wings. I think I'm going to touch on that in a minute. But so that lion had one head. Then it was a bear for the Persian Empire. That bear had one head. But then there was a leopard with four heads. That's the Greco-Macedonian Empire, which was split up amongst four of Alexander the Greek's generals. But it had four heads. So we got 2 plus 4. That's 6 heads. And the Roman Empire is the 7th head. So Rome is the 7th head. Just count them off. I've heard all sorts of theories, but the Bible interprets itself. The beast, if you count all the heads of all the beasts in the book of Daniel, it comes up to 7 heads. Right? Now the 10 horns we're going to get into. Because specifically the 10 horns are associated specifically with the Roman Empire, but they all still come out of that beast. It's a continuous thing. The Roman Empire is just a continuation of the Babylonian Empire, the head of gold. The whole thing put together is one big statue or one big 7-headed 10-horned beast. But just remember, count those 7 heads, the lion's head, then the bear's head, then 4 leopards' heads, there's 6. And then the last head is the Roman Empire, which has 10 horns, right? So it's not as complicated as we've been making it. I've heard all sorts of stuff, and some of it sounded like it made sense, but it wasn't Bible interpretation. That was just people reaching, And Daniel chapter 7, verse 2. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, The four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. What's the sea? The sea, Bible interprets itself, is that place of many nations and many languages. So what small area by the sea has many? Remember, we're speaking from the point of view of the beast systems, the beast nations, or the beast empires, which are made up of many different nations. It didn't matter which one was reigning; everybody was under the sway. So as many nations and many languages fall under these beast empires. And four great beasts came up from the sea. Out of that muck of nations comes the beast, diverse one from another. They were all different, yet they all had the same spirit behind them. So it's not some, it's Bible interprets itself. I think most people got this one right. They know that this beast comes out of the sea. They're talking about the Roman Empire ultimately, which is a conglomeration of all the beasts that went before. The four separate beasts in Daniel are all conglomerated into the one beast of Rome. The 10 horns. Let's talk about that. Heard a lot of people try to rationalize that. I've heard some people who got it down pretty good. Maybe it's not that difficult a concept, but the 10 horns are very simple. Let's read Daniel chapter 7 and verse 4. The first was like a lion. That's what we've been talking about. And had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. And a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like to the bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth. I won't go into that right now. Let's continue. In the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So these beasts are a mean situation. And remember, these beasts could not come about until the fall of Israel, when the Assyrians took them captive. These Gentile beast nations could not rule, not come about as long as Israel was solid. And when Israel fell, all of a sudden, right on the heels of Israel falling, immediately the beast empires arise out of the bottomless pit, if you will, the pit of hell. And the power is given to them from the Satans. Daniel chapter 7, verse 6. After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads. That's what I'm trying. Just count the heads of each one of these empires, each one of these separate beasts. And dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful, terrible, strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces. Notice iron. Iron is the strongest of the metals at the time, all the natural periodic table elements. Right? Iron is very strong. And stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. What does that mean? This is the Roman beast with teeth of iron, just like the legs of iron in Daniel's statue. So I should show you that, but that's not the intent of this video. Where we did a statue expose, in other videos, so I'm not going to go through it here. But when the Roman Empire broke apart, it never really went away. It kind of went dormant. But these are the nations that make up the fallen or not fallen Roman Empire, but the sleeping Roman. I don't know. After the Roman Empire, the driftwood of that great society turned into this. And if you count them off, you have these 10 tribal nation states that break off from the Roman Empire. So the Vandals are northern Africa. The Visigoths basically Spain. The Suevi is Portugal, basically. Then you see the Franks, the Anglo-Saxons, the Burgundians. The Alemanni is basically Germanic people. You have the Lombards. There's still a territory in Italy called Lombard. You have the Ostrogoths. Yeah, I think that's about it. But it's 10 altogether. So this is the driftwood of the Roman Empire. But they do still act as one. And they give their power to one. And that power is across the ocean, across the Atlantic Ocean. And you got to understand, all these countries in North America and South America were founded by essentially this broken Roman Empire. So the Anglo-Saxons founded, Canada and the United States, of course. The Franks and the Burgundians did part of Canada, right? And they had parts of Louisiana, what we call the Louisiana Purchase. So this group is still the Roman Empire. Is just not. At that point, around 1492, it was now more of a Holy Roman Empire, right? It was now headed by the papacy. And so the papacy is who, issued edicts called papal bulls saying, hey, you can enslave this group. Hey, we're going to divide up this new world amongst you guys. And here's the dividing line. Was that the Magna Carta? I believe it was Magna Carta. Anyway, but it was being orchestrated and blessed. All the kings of these tribal nations, they were all, looking back at the papacy for the approval. They wanted to make sure that God was with them on these ventures. And the Pope said, yeah, go forth and conquer. And I'm reading a book right now about that. And they were literally told to wipe people out. And they just, when they got to Jamaica, well, I'm going to do a video on that. I'm just thinking, they got to Jamaica, they were looking for gold. And this is Spanish, the Visigoths, right? They get there and they pretty much wipe the native population out. They just wiped them. But there's so much more to that. Remember I said that there was an Inquisition of the Jews in Spain and Portugal. And that's the beginnings of the transatlantic slave trade, because the Pope had ceded 2/3 of Africa to the Portuguese, the people we call the Suevi. And if you understand what was going on in the Inquisition, they were trying to force the Jews to become Catholics. Many of them would rather die, and so they burned them at the stake, clubbed them, whatever. But what really messed them up is when they started enslaving their children, and they took the children and sent them to West Africa. You see, that's what history is not telling you. How did the transatlantic slave trade even start? It started when the Portuguese, who had all this territory in Africa, there's people living there, but that's not going to stop them. Didn't stop the English, from going coast to coast in America. Didn't stop the Portuguese. So they get down there, and they were, because of the climate and the insects and diseases down there, they didn't do very well. But they looked at the Jews and they said, hey, let's turn them into slaves and make them work the sugarcane fields down in West Africa. And that's the beginnings of the transatlantic slave trade. And all this is documented. So, all that stuff you learn in school, I'm trying to tell you something. And I'm going to go at length into the history of this. But the Jews were sent down to West Africa. And then the Portuguese discover Brazil. And guess what? They ended up going to Brazil too. They said, well, we need slaves over there too. So the Portuguese took slaves over to Brazil. But also at the same time, the Jews that could escape, they, some of them, the ones that converted, they were called conversos, right? And so there's a whole history on that. I don't have time in this video, but it starts to make more sense when you understand what was going on at the time, why so many people were willing to leave Europe. And you're going to find out. You're going to find out a lot of these conversos, these Jews who had turned into Christians or Catholics, came to the New World because they were still Jews in their hearts, right? But we'll get into that in another video. But just know that the 10 horns are right here. It doesn't, it's pretty simple takeaway. Most people agree on this one, so I won't belabor the point. So the Roman Empire broke up into 10 basic pieces, and they spread around the globe. And the Roman Empire now essentially controls the world. Only they have more power now. Like I said, when they can mandate stuff and everybody on the planet has to do it or else, that's power, right? So this version of the Roman Empire doesn't call itself the Roman Empire. We have there's one name for it that I think sums it up, but I won't say it right now. I think I've said it in other videos, but there's just a conglomeration of these nations that rule the world under their system. And I'm definitely going to do this video to kind of bring it up to date and show you what Babylon really, really, really is. And it's more than just a religion, right? It's more than just a country. It's an entire system. And if you're hearing my voice right now, you're probably under this system. So, like I said, John couldn't see the beast until he was taken away from it into the wilderness. Then he could see it. He was right up on it, so he couldn't see it. It's like looking through a microscope. You could be looking at something under a microscope and not know what it is until you back off and realize, and we did this in science class, you realize, oh, it's an onion skin. It looked like aliens under the microscope. So you have to step back to be able to see things sometimes. And so, like I say, you're in the system. There's a reason the Most High, he says to his people, come out of her. What does that mean? It means his people are in her. They're in Babylon. He said, come out of her. So it's not just a country. I mean, you could be in a country, but not be part of that system. And it's going to be very difficult to not be part of that system. And they're going to make sure it's virtually impossible to not be part of that system. So get your popcorn ready. This is going to get real. And I know people, you don't cast your pearls before swine because they'll turn around and rend you. I can make all the sense in the world and people still not going to want to hear what I'm saying. But just know this, it doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. It's, I could tell you, hey, don't go out in the street. There's a tractor trailer doing 90 miles an hour down the road. And you can look back at me and go, you don't know what you're talking about. And then bam. So I told you, it's not on my conscience anymore. I know some of you don't believe, but that's not on me. I see this very clearly. I mean, I see darkly, but clearer than most, I think. And I'm not bragging. It's just, there's a lot of people who know this stuff. It's not like just me. So I'm really, for those who kind of see it, we're kind of comparing notes here. And they're probably looking at this going, yeah, I got that. And maybe there's some things I brought up that they didn't think about. Because I know a lot of people are confused about the heads. I don't think people are confused about the horns so much. But, that's what we were tackling in this one. So let's And we keep getting up. I know this is going on for a while. So I don't know. What do you think? I'm not saying I'm perfect on this, but just things seem to be making sense. So Revelation 17 verse 12, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. And he's going to make war. Who can make war against this beast, right? Man, y'all pay attention. Don't get all sentimental. So I'll say farewell on that one. I love you all so much, and thank you so much for continually supporting my content. If you did enjoy this video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, and share this with your friends and family. I'm sure they'd find it interesting as well. I'm very excited to continue this journey with you, and I thank you all for bringing certain stories to my attention and for continually keeping me updated with certain events around the world. I very much appreciate you all, and shout out to the channel members. May everybody have a beautiful and blessed day who's in the body of Messiah. Yahusha HaMashiach. And I'll see you in the next video. Shalom.